Hello, everyone. If you're just tuning in, welcome. If you're coming back, welcome back. My name is Angelica. I am one of the community event managers at Modern Sales Pros, and we are in day 2 of the RevEx Fest Revenue Excellent Festival for Modern Sales Pros. For those of you who are not familiar with MSP, we are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales revenue operations, and enablement, aka our modern sales pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer the toughest revenue questions out there. So if you're not a member yet, don't worry, you'll be invited to join right after the summit. And the summit wouldn't be possible without our amazing sponsors that you see here. So big thanks to them for making this RevEx Fest happen. To learn more about our sponsors, definitely check out the sponsor tab located at the top and check out all their amazing websites and resources there. Don't forget to check the agenda. We have a jam-packed schedule for today as well as yesterday if you missed it, and tomorrow. So definitely check out the list of speakers and events that we have coming up. Now, before we dive into introductions for our amazing speakers today, just quick housekeeping notes and agenda. I'm going to go through some housekeeping notes, then I'm going to pass it off to our awesome speakers to say a little bit about themselves, and then they'll dive into the discussion prompts. And if you have a question for our guests, please leverage the Q&A function at the top right-hand corner or the chat, and we'll be sure to get them. And last but not least, for housekeeping, yes, this event is being recorded and you'll be able to access the key takeaways and recording via email if you register and familiarize yourself with Goldcast. Again, we have the amazing agenda and sponsor links. Use the chat, make some friends, ask your questions, and have fun. Now, drum roll, please. Our amazing speakers for this session today is on Design to Win, Sales Excellent Playbooks and Scale with the CEO of Winning by Design, Dominique Levine and Pete Kazanji. I'm going to pass it off to Pete and Dominique to say a few words about them and dive right into the content. And I'll be back with the closing remarks.
Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here with you today. We have about 45 minutes on the clock, and the end goal is that at the end of those 45 minutes, you should know how you can add revenue for your company without adding any salespeople or customer success rep, or without increasing your marketing budget. So how we're going to do that, you'll just have to wait and see. I also hope that at the end of this session, you will actually understand what the hell is revenue architecture and what is a recurring revenue operating model and why do I need one. And I predict that at least some of you will go out and hire a revenue architect or maybe become one at the end of this presentation. So there we go.
I love it. So Dominique, thank you for running straight out of the gate there. Just for some introductions for folks. Hey, everybody, I'm Pete Kazanji. I'm the founder of Atrium and also of Modern Sales Pros. I'm going to introduce my friend here, Dominique, here in a second, and she's going to give you guys a little bit of context on what she does at Winning by Designs. But I am the founder of the CRO of Atrium. We make data-driven sales management software. Prior to that, I started a recruiting software company called Talentbin that was acquired by Monster Worldwide in 2014. And subsequent to that, I wrote a book on startup sales called Founding Sales, and also started Modern Sales Pros, which you guys are all familiar with. And Dominique here, probably doesn't need any introduction, but she is the CEO of Winning by Designs, a amazing, revenue excellence consultancy. Dominique, you want to give folks a little bit of context, not only on what you spend your time doing at Winning by Designs, but maybe what you did just prior?
Yeah, so previously I loved to not just build companies, but create new markets. So I was involved in the creation of the customer success universe as the founding CMO of Tatango. I also was doing something similar at a company called Agile One, which pioneered predictive marketing and using predictive analytics and customer database to optimize customer lifetime value. So yeah, I've been quite passionate about this whole idea of differentiating not just by what you sell, but about how you go to market and how you sell and really turn that into a science. So it's exciting that, so many people are into that these days. We're at Winning by Design. We're now up to about 110 consultants worldwide,
Wow.
and have been able to help about 700 companies to date optimize their revenue machine.
That's absolutely fantastic. I'm super excited to listen to your presentation here today on revenue architecture. So please, why don't you take us away?
That sounds great. So I know I hit it there out of the gate, but as a reminder, what we're going to do in the next 45 minutes is teach you how to increase your revenue without adding additional people or without increasing your marketing budget. And by the end of this presentation, hopefully you know what revenue architecture is, and you may even want to hire or become a revenue architect. Who knows? So there we go. So this is our agenda for today, but I'll dive straight in. You can read that all. Let's just start with a dose of reality. Like, where are we today? This is from about a year ago, a little bit more than that, right? The wonderful world of unicorn creation. Winning by Design, we work with about 30 of these big boys and girls every year, but we were creating unicorns by the hundreds. Clearly a big boom. Also yielded huge valuations across the board in the private and the public markets, with a huge SaaS boom, right? After many years ago, Andreessen said that software would eat the world, and there off we went. Unfortunately, something happened a little more recently, and that line suddenly doesn't look as great anymore. So what happened? Now, one thing that we believe happened is that with the reset in the market, and of course money becoming suddenly much more scarce and much more expensive, all investors, public and private, send the same message basically to you all, which is it is no longer growth at all costs. So suddenly scalable growth, or sustainable growth, as we like to say, matters a whole lot. And if you want to know more about sustainable growth and the math behind that, go Google. My good friend and colleague Jacko has recently done quite a few presentations around this topic. But
Nice.
Me as the CEO, I like to simplify that and just dumb it down. What we need to do in this market is to reduce costs, but still continue to grow and increase revenue. So that is our conundrum for today. How do we reach sustainable growth by continuing to grow with the existing resources that we have in the company? Is that even possible? What do you think, Pete? Are we going to be able to do it?
I feel that it might be doable with the right revenue architecture, if you will.
Well, let's see. So the first, I'll start off with a story to get us going. And this is a story about Sir Dave. Now, Sir Dave became the head coach of the British cycling team in 2002. He was a former professional cyclist, but he also had an MBA. And so he decided to apply the Japanese principle of Kaizen to his British team. Why? They were, let's just say, pretty bad. In the 76-year history of this franchise, they had exactly one. How many, Pete? How many medals do you think they won?
0?
One! They got one in 76 years.
I mean, okay, yeah, like that's better.
One better. Yes, it's better. That's definitely infinitely better. But yeah, so needless to say, the franchise was in shambles. In fact, nobody in Europe wanted to sell them bicycles because they were worried that if the cyclists were on their bikes, nobody would want to buy their bikes. So bad was their reputation. So Sir Dave went to work, and he went looking for a number of 1% improvements, and he found them in the most fascinating of places. For example, it turns out that if dust, comes in these wheels, then the bike doesn't perform optimally. So he painted all of the trucks that transported the bikes white to make sure that any dust could be more easily seen and removed, so the bikes would perform optimally. They also started traveling with their own mattresses so that the cyclists would get a better night's sleep. This is pre-COVID, so they traveled with a doctor that taught everybody how to properly wash their hands so that they wouldn't get sick or get a cold during the race. And they, these pens that you see here are actually temperature controlled so that the muscles of the cyclists are at the optimal temperature during the race. So fast forward 5 years of this, in the 2008 Beijing Olympics, basically the British team walked away with how many medals? Actually, I don't know, but 60% of all the medals to be had went to the British cycling team.
Wow.
And every single member on the team has at least one medal. So needless to say, the compound impact of little things done right is a powerful thing. And this is what we're going to tap into today to solve our conundrum. This is my favorite math equation. I've been walking around with this for some years, and I'm always shocked how few people were just really bad at humans at thinking in compound impact. So get your calculators out. What we're going to do is we're going to be a little more ambitious than Sir Dave. We're going to do 10% improvements.
Wow.
But, they're not actually that big. So think about it. For example, let's say that your team today does, on average, I don't know, gives 15% discount to your clients. All I'm asking is that going forward, instead of 15% discount, they would do 13.5%, right? So we're talking about a 10% change. Or let's say that your current win rate is 20%. All I want your team to do is to go from a 20% win rate to a 22% win rate, right? So we're not saying plus 10, we're truly saying basically 1.1, right? But we want to find 7 of these opportunities across your customer journey. What is going to be the impact of that? Give a calculator out, Pete. What impact are we going to have as a result?
We're going to double our performance, aren't we?
We're going to double our performance, because if you paid attention, that's what we're going to do today. We are actually at 1.95 if you actually have punched this into your calculator. But yeah, we can actually double. And this is driving, I think, a lot of us at Winning by Design for many years already, is this idea that the compound impact of little things done right can actually have a really big impact on your business. So that's nice. So hopefully we're now all convinced that it's possible, but there is still a very big question. How? This all sounds great, Dominique, but how are we actually going to do that? So the first thing we need to do is we need to move away from our traditional mindset that is very people focused, especially in sales. I describe this as the superstar culture. Like, if you want to sell, you hire smart people. And if things don't go well, you fire them, and probably the rest of the team, and you just get a bunch of new people. Our point of view is that is not, a sustainable or structured way to improve your business. Instead, we're going to encourage you to think in models, to think in math, maybe even, right? I want you to apply as much engineering and design and structure to your revenue organization as you do probably to your product if you're in tech. So that's the short answer to the how. Now, of course, that is easier said than done, because we actually don't have that many models that we all know and use in revenue in general, let alone in recurring revenue, which is a newer thing. So I'll get back to this picture later. But I first want to go back to reality, like we did with the markets. We live in the dark ages, people. I mean, where we are in sales today is probably akin to maybe we just opened our first hospital, 1800s. Maybe the first operating room just went up. But let's just think about this analogy again. Like, how did modern medicine, actually come to be? And something we often quote, which is why I like the medical analogy, is my favorite saying to clients, but also apply to this problem, is prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. Malpractice.
It's no bueno.
Yeah, malpractice. So we need some models to do this diagnosis, right? If I walk into a doctor's office, if they didn't have a model of the human body, let's say I have pain in my knee, right? They would need to know sort of the anatomy of the human body to even have a fighting chance to try and figure out why it is that I have pain in my knee. However, this is not the only model of the human body. Maybe the pain in my knee is not caused by bone structure at all. Maybe it's the result of something going on with my muscle, my muscular system, which is a completely different representation of the human body that could also give the doctor clues to what might be going on with my knee that particular day. Now okay, let me not go off track. You could go into question-based selling and how you need to ask questions, but we'll do that some other day.
That's another, I'm sure if they go to Winning by Design's website, I'm sure there's a lovely presentation or like 6 on question-based selling or selling by curiosity and what have you. But like, in order to diagnose, you got to be asking questions, right?
You have to have a mental representation of, right? So even in order to ask questions, you sort of have to have a hypothesis. And so
Sure.
this idea that as an industry, we really need not one, but probably multiple models to even go down this road of systematically improving our revenue engine. And so this, to me, is really this idea or this concept at the highest level, right, of the revenue architecture, is this idea of applying model-based thinking, of applying science, and of applying math to our revenue problem. And it's really shocking. I mentioned earlier, we work with quite a few unicorns, and sometimes even post IPO, they cannot tell us their growth formula of how it is that revenue actually happens in mathematical terms in their organization. Very shocking, but a huge opportunity for you all, because the land of the blind, one-eyed man is king, or one-eyed woman. And if you are the first to apply this revenue architecture thinking in your particular industry, you might as well be crowned the queen or king.
Yes. I mean, I think you noted this earlier that like excellence in go-to-market can be a source of advantage. I think a lot of in startups, a lot of times people consider the only potential source of advantage is like a key product insight, or like a key product insight is a source of advantage. It is. Don't get me wrong, it is. But like, you can compound that with a source of advantage of go-to-market.
Absolutely, and this
excellence.
is a painful part of my personal history, which I conveniently skipped over. But I was CEO of a company called LogLogic, which was a log management company that competed directly with another little company called Splunk, which you probably have heard of. Never heard of them. Oh, thank God. These two companies, it's sort of the perfect business school case study to prove this point, Pete, because both of our companies, again, had an exit in the same week. So now you have two companies. Not just that, we had each about 50 million in revenue. We each had about 1,000 enterprise customers. So here you have these two companies. They are in the same market. They have similar products. They have the same number of customers, and they have the same amount of revenue. And then they had an exit in the same week. We sold the company to TIPCO. It was not bad. Everybody made money. I mean, it was definitely hundreds of millions, but Splunk went IPO at 15 times the valuation in that same week. So why? Like, how come? Like, what about it was worth? Because it was worth, it was not irrational, it was a rational valuation. Why was the valuation of Splunk so much higher than the valuation of LogLogic?
Better go-to-market?
Go-to-market. But the specific metrics were their growth rate was higher and their cost of sales was lower, because they were one of the first to have a very consumerized, right? It was not even SaaS yet, but you could do a free download. We had an appliance, so you have to rack and stack that box, talk to multiple salespeople. We put it on a truck, and 3 weeks later, maybe you can try and touch our product. So anyway, there was a real different go-to-market model that yielded a higher growth rate, lower cost of sales, that absolutely justified. And so that to me is the perfect, and actually also how I ended up becoming so passionate of a student of go-to-market. Like, that is not going to happen to me ever again.
Presumably, there were lots of opportunity for 5% improvements all throughout the
along the way as well.
The revenue journey of LogLogic in retrospect. But now everybody else gets the benefit of that.
Yes. Yeah, and it was a little tricky. We had an apply. Anyway, I'll again reserve that for some different day. But here we go. So in some ways you could think about revenue architecture, revenue operations 2.0. Anyway, we'll get back to that whole idea of what is a revenue architect. First, I want to go a little bit more into these models that I just mentioned are so critical to making this all work. So if we're talking Kaizen, again, Kaizen was obviously developed primarily in the auto industry. So it might help to stick with that metaphor a little bit and to understand, right? If I'm the head of this plan and I'm looking to optimize the throughput and yield of, which is basically what sales is, right? You want to have more deals faster, so throughput and yield of this particular factory line. The first thing I need is actually to model this line, right? I need to break it up in chunks. I need to make sure that I separate the putting on of the front right wheel station from the left wheel, from the bumper, I mean, there could be improvements in any of these stages, along the factory line. So the first thing I need to do is actually have a working model so that then I can do some measurement and say, well, what part of this factory process could be most improved? Is it indeed the right front wheel? Is it maybe that the Toyota Corolla front right wheel goes on slower than the Prius, and therefore I know that there is an opportunity? So I compare myself to myself in this case, right? Maybe the front right wheel used to go on really fast, but now it takes a lot longer. So once I see those patterns in the data, I can find opportunities. I can go to the Gemba, I can go observe and say, maybe what's going on? Maybe this fellow has gloves, but maybe his colleagues don't. And maybe the bolts are slippery and fall on the floor. And if I were to prescribe that everyone should wear gloves, then I improve the throughput of this particular line. So anyway, what I really would like to do in addition is not just compare myself to myself, but what about Tesla? Like, is Tesla really good at putting on wheels on cars? Is there something I could learn from that? Now, the only way we can do that is we have some standards. So something that really also fostered, obviously, the whole Kaizen Six Sigma movement was, the availability of standards. And so this is part of my mission today, not just of, I don't know, bringing your attention to the need for models and the need for revenue architecture and sort of an engineering mindset when it comes to revenue, but also that we need to work together to define some of these things so that we can benefit from that and benchmark, our process against our peers. So let's do it. So we believe the first thing, again, like we need if we're on this journey, is to model out the customer journey. And this is the bow tie. So we can't really, typically, sales might be represented by a funnel on its side. This is clearly, has more going on. Why? Because of recurring revenue, which is the result of recurring impact. And 90% of revenue for most of you today might come after that initial sale, right? Might come from renewals, from expansions, from existing clients. And so when we're talking about modeling our revenue machine, first thing I want you to take away is, and we're actually going to focus a lot on the right side of this bow tie today, which just doesn't get enough attention. Again, mentioned, some of these unicorns, they had a board presentation, 50 slides, 48 slides to the board on this left-hand side and how that all worked, and then 2 slides on the right side of the bow tie and what was going on there. So collectively, let's at least commit that if 90% of our revenue comes from the right side of the bow tie, maybe 90% of our effort to improve things might also come from the right side of the bow tie. Perhaps, who knows? So I mentioned already yield and throughput. So again, to identify these improvement opportunities, 3 metrics to focus on. First is volume. Most people do that pretty well. Number of leads, number of opportunities, number of closed deals, etc. Conversion metrics tend to give you a really good view of opportunities for improvement, especially if you see changes. Maybe from rep to rep, maybe one rep has a much higher close rate. One product might have a much higher close rate than another. Those are all clues to go dig and say, what can we learn from each other? And sometimes, you might find that your close rate is much lower again than industry average. That might then be a really good opportunity to go find your 10% improvements, right? You can't change everything at the same time. I mean, when I learned tennis many years ago, my coach was trying to tell me, go change your grip and your stance and your swing all at the same time. And my head was exploding and I gave up tennis. So instead, this coach should just told me to focus on one thing at a time. And
choose your spots.
better results. So this is what you're doing with some of the benchmarking against yourself, against the industry. You're finding, those 10% improvements. Don't worry about getting it wrong. I mean, sometimes people overdo that and they're endlessly getting stuck in analysis paralysis in terms of what is the best thing to do first. Just get started somewhere, people, and then keep it going, right? It's a never-ending, continuous improvement loop where you will always find things that you could continue to improve. After you identify, let's say, again, your, I don't know, lead to opportunity ratio is taking a nosedive. So the equivalent of going to the Gamba, right, observing that gentleman and his gloves, would be to just listen in on calls. I don't know when the last time was that you all listened to an actual call. So this is the equivalent of going to the Gamba in sales. If you haven't listened to at least 3 calls of yourself, of your peers, of your reps in the last week, then please go do so now immediately. You will be shocked at how much you can learn. And obviously these days, we all can record everything. So there really isn't any excuse. You don't need fancy software. If you want to deploy some conversational analytics, go for it. But you can also just use Zoom recordings. I mean, just go listen to people. All right, so now we have hopefully a working data model. We have some hints of what could be improved in our organization. Where might these 10% opportunities lie? The next thing is actually the most hard. Like, okay, that's great, but how do we actually implement that? That's where we need an operating model. Definition of an operating model, basically a blueprint of how to run a business. How do I actually, in the end of the day, it's still people that execute these discovery calls we talked about, or these trade negotiations, or these onboarding calls, or whatever. And so we need some pretty specific how-to instructions on how to implement or how to do things better. What should we be doing differently? So this is this idea of an operating model, so that there can be institutional learning. If you don't document what good looks like in terms of a good discovery call, a good handoff to CS, or what have you, then you can't really learn from each other and continue to improve. So this is this idea of having a set of blueprints, or again, fancy term, operating model for your business.
Checklist, documentation, a bunch
Pictures,
of bullets.
we love pictures. So we're going to go through a couple of these. You see a picture here to the right-hand side, but I promised you a little scoop here, Pete, and we're about to release next month a new operating model for, or this month, I should say. So brand new, fresh off the press, October, customer success operating model. Because again, we feel that people are just not focusing enough on that opportunity with existing clients. And just like there's a huge opportunity to get the most out of existing people, right? This economic environment, really imperative that we all focus on our existing customer-based book of business. And so I decided to give you some practical examples and tips. All this stuff so far has been pretty geeky, theoretical. Let's get some practical tips of where in our customer base, do we see frequent opportunities for 10% improvements? And we're going to focus today 100% on the right side of the bow tie using some of these new blueprints that we've just released. All right, so first is so we're going to take one from onboarding, one from adoption, and one from expansion. So first, we're going to look at the customer kickoff. So when it comes to the customer kickoff, I would say the most common opportunity for immediate improvement is get your reps, and again, this often is actually a combination of sales and customer success together on the kickoff call with the client to re-diagnose your client. This is the first time that you're sitting at the same side of the table. And so too many people just launch immediately into the technical implementation. Oh, let's get set up. Let's get your username, password. Let me give you a demo of how the admin dashboard works, etc. But pause. Let's step back for a second. like let's, and again, our diagnostic framework is SPICE, but you could use MEDDIC, you could use, I don't care. Just ask them, why did you buy? What is
Yes.
the impact that you're looking to achieve and by when? Because if you have the clear answer to that picture, and I know you asked it, I'm sure during the sales cycle, but ask again. Now you're partners. Now you're on the same side of the table. You're going to get a lot more detail, truthful answer to that question now that you're no longer negotiating and you're trying to collaborate to actually achieve that impact. And knowing, right, if you don't know where you're going, no wind or every wind is favorable. So really having that question come back in the kickoff is super critical. And with that, related to that, is also this idea that a kickoff call is not just a technical meeting. That's why I love having the reps in there.
Yep.
And on the part of the client, make sure that the business decision maker is in there. So everybody aligns. People, this deployment needs to be done by the end of the month because we are looking to save money, to make money. This is why we bought, this particular product. And so your business stakeholder is going to be super aligned with you at this point in time, whereas maybe the people responsible for the actual implementation have 100 other things. So you really need your client stakeholder to remind them how important this is and how urgent this is. So this would be my one tip for something to do differently to try on your next kickoff call. Re-diagnose your client and make sure that your business stakeholder is there when you do that. All right, tip number 1. We're going to tip number 2, which is motoring right along to okay, great. Let's assume we've achieved first impact. We are fully deployed. Now we are going to hold an impact review. This is our term for business review, type of meeting. So this meeting, so here again, operating model, what does that mean? There's an actual picture of what a good impact review could look like. You see this re-diagnose coming up again and again because a lot can change, right? We just saw that in our setup today. A lot changed from last quarter to 2 quarters ago to today in terms of the external environment. That's true for your client too. Maybe since you last talked to them, they have hired people, fired people, made acquisitions. You need to know because then you can align your product and the impact it can provide to that new impact and critical event that your client might have. And so I would say this is, again, the biggest mistake is that people just focus on the past. Look at all the great things I've done for you lately. Yeah, that's great. But what about the future? What is the goals that your client has for the next quarter, for the next year? And so always refreshing that joint impact plan. First of all, we'll get your client to impact. And remember, recurring impact equals recurring revenue, but also more tactically, frankly, you will walk out of these meetings with pipeline, right? We all need more pipeline right now. So totally. If you haven't had an impact review with your existing base recently, if you haven't told them about your new features, go talk to them and figure out what's going on in their world and how you might help them. And helping might mean selling. And this is perfectly fine.
Yep.
So number 3, so now we are expanding, right? So we have just driven adoption. We focused on our impact review. But again, we all need more pipeline right now. So go, if you haven't done a full white space plan of your existing accounts, right? Then go back and do that. If you have multiple products, have they bought all the products? Which clients have deployed all licenses, right? Is there an opportunity to expand their licensing? Or have you already tapped out? Your scarce resource right now and always will be is people.
Yep.
So this is, focusing, deciding where your people focus their time has an outsized impact on the result, right? If you have 100 clients and you only have customer success resources to cover 10 of them and to spend time with 10 of them this month, which 10 accounts are you going to spend time on? And this comes out of your white space planning, right? Where is there most expansion opportunity? Mostly people focus on which clients are at risk, and that's definitely a valid lens, but I would say put the expansion lens on your client base as well. And especially this day and age, spend time with those clients where you have most expansion capability. And then before you go into the meeting, do some account planning. This is the famous Lincoln quote, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree. I'm going to spend my first 4 hours, Pete. What are we going to do?
Sharpen your axe.
Sharpen the axe, man. High five. So that is where we are going to spend our time. Before we get into that meeting, make sure that we know everything there is to know about what other departments this client might have. So I can ask for some internal referrals and introductions. I should have expansion opportunities in mind. And then obviously going back to diagnose. See a theme here, lots of diagnosing before we prescribe. All right, so those are 3 tips. So I think finally I can circle back to my revenue architecture topic. Hopefully you get a sense of what revenue architecture is all about. It's about data, but then it's also about these operational models that will help your team actually make the change, right? And implement these opportunities that you might have found. And we believe that every company should have a revenue architect, right? We believe that you can win in your market by differentiating based on how you sell, by putting engineering and design into your revenue engine. But that is a job. I've seen this movie before. We said it in the beginning. It's just like when customer success first happened and recurring revenue happened. Recurring revenue doesn't happen by itself. It needs to be a person's job to drive the client to impact. So same thing here. It needs to be someone's job to, on an ongoing basis, analyze the data, find opportunities for improvement, and almost be that internal consultant to drive the change. So the way I look at this revenue architect job, and we've written quite a few job descriptions for our clients recently, it's not quite revenue ops or revenue enablement. It includes that. Yes, a lot of things that a revenue architect might do might look and sound like what revenue operations or enablement might do. But in addition, there's a lot more data analysis. And then there's a lot more strategy, transformation, change management, right? In which sequence are we going to implement these things? How are we going to implement this? And so it's pretty cool. We see sort of a whole new type of people. I mean, former consultants, recent MBAs and so forth, finding their way into revenue operations and revenue architecture. It's not just about configuring Salesforce and writing proposals. It is really often these revenue architects are becoming the right or left hand of the VP sales, and these people find themselves in the boardroom and presenting to boards, and I don't know. My kids are just a little too young, but otherwise I would tell them revenue architecture. It's sort of like the proverbial plastics that we heard from the Graduate movie. You are too young for that movie, but it's a classic. The future is revenue architecture, is my prediction.
Plastic,
today.
my boy, plastics.
Plastics, my boy, yes. So this is also our vision at Winning by Design. We're very passionate. We think that clients are off better. We even think that people in these companies are off better if we can just focus on making recurring revenue happen and having more data and science and models. This is our official vision statement. What you don't see here is Winning by Design should make a lot of money, or Winning by Design should have a lot of employees. We are super committed to an open source kind of philosophy. And so if you're interested in some of the things we discussed and you want to learn more about revenue architecture, hire that revenue architect or become that revenue architect, go check it out. We have lots of complementary resources available that you can just go grab. You can go to the scienceofrevenue.com, sort of a companion partner site to Winning by Design. But we also have thousands of YouTube videos. Again, a lot of the blueprints I shared today, including that CS operating model, are, again, available free of charge. You can use it to improve your business tomorrow. Do let me know if it worked. We'd love to see about that. If you do find that you need more help, we are also running revenue architecture courses. So this is to, again, accelerate this whole movement of this new profession of revenue architects. We think that the industry needs a lot more than we can ever hire consultants. So again, we're trying to create a bit of a self-help movement, both by the complementary resources and by this revenue architecture course that you can check out on our website, where you can learn some of the models in more depth that I went through, the data model, the operating model. But as you can see here, there's a lot more to analyze, just like you saw the doctors do, right? Lots of different lenses on your business that all have, in the end, one goal, right? Is to increase revenue in a systematic way without hiring additional people or leads. You can do that too if you have the money, but don't fill a leaky bucket, right? First optimize the system and then throw more wood on the fire. So 3 actions. Hopefully you go home and, even in the most rudimentary of ways, look at the metrics you already have, model your business, find an opportunity, assign someone on your team to play this revenue architect role. Is probably the best investment you can make in your business. And then just go implement something. Pick a skill. I don't know. We went through a couple today in terms of right side or bow tie, right? A skill when it comes to running kickoff meetings, impact reviews, or white space analysis of existing clients. Just pick an initiative. Don't do it all, because then you'll end up like me, giving up on tennis and so forth. But pick one thing, then prove that it works, and then go back. And you can keep doing that, and before you know it, you've achieved our goal of doubling revenue in a very difficult time where pipeline is everything.
Yeah, excellent. Dominique, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for taking us through that. I think one of the questions that kind of comes to mind, and you were kind of joking about this as relates to the hospitals and kind of like that the sales is in kind of like the earliest innings there. What do you think has changed to enable this revenue architecture approach that presumably wasn't present previously? Because people have been selling things for like a bit of time here. Like, it's the craft is not new. However, this revenue architecture approach is new. I have some hypotheses around there. Are there kind of things that you think have changed that have enabled this, where prior to this they were absent?
Yeah, so I think there's sort of a supply and a demand side here, right? So on the one hand, there is definitely a greater need to do this as recurring revenue happened. The initial deal size also came down quite a bit, right? So it used to be, you might do a big multi-million-dollar deal on the golf course, and these days your initial sale might be a $50,000 a year annual contract. So this requirement to optimize, also to bring down your cost of sales has started really with SaaS, which is why you see that's where a lot of the innovation comes from. We are seeing now that all of B2B is of course taking an interest, especially in the current climate. But I think so that's some of the demand side. I think on the supply side or the what's possible side, right? It is undeniable that a lot more data is available today than exactly. Ever was before. And then, of course, remote or inside sales was already a thing for quite a while, but then during the pandemic got significantly accelerated. So not only do we have data available that will allow us to instrument that entire customer journey, but we even have that go to the Gemba, right? That next step. It is very easy now to go observe sellers and customer success reps in action by reviewing the recordings. Increasingly, yes, also extracting maybe some intelligence from that, but intelligence will get better. But even if you have to do it manually, that opportunity just didn't exist. So I think those two things are coming together, right? There is more need, but there's also more opportunity to now deploy this kind of thinking to revenue.
Yeah, I think one of the things that on the second thing you were talking about, the more data availability, this is definitely something that we see in our customer base here at Atrium, where like you're talking about Six Sigma approaches, continuous improvement, looking for kind of like one of my favorite business books, of course, is The Goal. a process of continuous improvement, which of course is about manufacturing and factories and what have you, written as a novel to make it fun. But I think that the availability of like data that comes from cloud databases like CRMs and what have you that is capturing this information, like selling information that then can be used to diagnose hitches, right? Like kind of critical paths in the customer journey. That's the kind of the thing that you're talking about. Like you need the data in order to do the diagnosis. The other thing that we find too is you need data in order to do the ongoing audit, right? Like once we actually have our revenue architecture in place and we have that syndicated across 10, 20, 50, 100 reps, well, now those are like assembly lines, right? And so we need to have data acquisition on those assembly lines in order to make sure like, hey, this line out of here is out of compliance with the process that we've prescribed. And I think we see something very similar in our customer base where like this notion of data-driven sales management is a very new thing and the muscles aren't really there. Because if you think about like where a lot of sales managers and sales leaders come from, they come from selling land. They don't necessarily come from analytics land or finance land or what have you. But the important thing is that like this is a required capability for a manager, a leader, et cetera, in the future is being able to use metrics and data to measure and improve their teams. In your case, you're talking about measuring and then like improving across the entire flow. But then of course, as managers, you have to then, it's like someone laid out the factory, right, and the assembly lines and what have you, and now you need like line managers who are responsible for like 5 lines, and like they're not just doing their like sampling the chocolates that come off of the coming off the assembly line, that they're using data to instrument what's happening there. Yeah. Oh, you're muted, Dom.
If managers can't improve the performance, right, of individual reps, why have managers in the first place? And so managers also need that mental model. So I think that's one of the things when we say we introduce this revenue architecture concept. The idea also is you need some of these mental models, right? It's not just having the data, but having some sort of a model, whether it's a model on a hypothesis, I guess, on what does good look like for kickoff meeting with a client. What does good look like for performance of an individual rep as well, right? So absolutely data-driven conversations per rep, and also this concept of circling back.
Yes.
Again, we can apply there if we stick with our medical analogy for today, right? Like it's like the follow-up, like what doctor prescribes medicine to a patient and then doesn't follow up, right? Like, no, you check in with your patient, and if the treatment plan isn't working, you adjust it. And that is a continuous, again, loop that will ultimately drive employee, call it rep lifetime value, I guess, is
right. Well, one of the things that we also see in our customers is when you have those managers who, to extend the Kaizen analogy here, the whole thing with like Toyota lean manufacturing was the people who are on the line, like if they saw a defect, they could stop the line, right? And so if you're a manager and you see something that's wrong in your reps, it's probably likely that defect exists on the other lines as well. And then moreover, when you have people who are doing clever things to like optimize things, like maybe they're batching their stuff or whatever they're doing, you're going to have people who are like, hey, I want to make more money because I'm a seller. So I'm going to use my brain and like do creativity around the edges. I may not actually broadcast that to other folks, but as a manager, both you can find those defects, fix it in that individual case, but then also up level to say, hey, we may have this problem across the entire factory. Similarly, hey, this person had this really clever approach right here that seems to be raising their conversion rates out of disco or from proposal or like fill in the blank, or allows them to have more meetings or whatever it is, right? Now let's go ahead and take that behavior and then syndicate it across everybody else. And then lo and behold, and so it's like that feedback loop of like those data-driven managers can take that information and then inform the improving revenue architecture of the entire organization.
But listen to what you just said. I couldn't, of course, agree more, but have we just turned sales into a team sport? Are we no
Yeah.
longer competing for like the awards? Right? I mean, at some point, I've actually, and we're starting to play around with this idea of, should we adjust compensation in that world as well? Right? Should there be, because you said, hey, it's not the individual job to make the team better. Well, what
Maybe
should
it should be.
right? Like,
Yeah.
why not? Like, and I think
Yep.
especially this new generation actually likes to work as a team, likes to do peer
Yeah.
coaching and so forth. And I think there's a lot of opportunity, both culturally, of course, managers on the front line for all of that and are critical making that happen and changing that mindset shift from we're not competing, we are collaborating. If
Yeah.
I make the process better, everybody benefits, right? So why not?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you would. I mean, I think people would be hesitant to erode the kind of motivational component of like the increment, like eat what you kill, incremental effort makes for incremental benefit. Historically, like the benefits associated with being collaborative like that comes in the form of like promotion or potential path into management or what have you. But there's certainly probably a more immediate opportunity there for like, you know, collaborative kickers or what have you that like rewards that sort of behavior that doesn't necessarily erode the personal drive of like, you know, personal commission compensation. Well, Dominique, we're out of time. This is absolutely fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time. The presentation was awesome, folks. If you aren't following Winning by Design on YouTube, you're really missing out. They put amazing content out, absolutely, like with like amazing frequency, unsurprisingly. So Dominique, thank you very much and have a great rest of your day, okay?
Thanks. Bye. Have a good one.
Thank you, Pete and Dominique. That was awesome. And thank you everyone for attending today's session. The Revenue Architecture course by Winning by Design is found in the chat drops and will also be found in the email post event. So definitely check that out, as well as their YouTube link that Pete mentioned. Now, next up, I'm here to announce Blazing Trails, Creating Disruptive New Sales Technology up next at our Modern Sales Pro RevEx Fest. So we'll see you there.